The Egyptian president calls for the resumption of the US-Iran negotiations. Netanyahu says Israel will intensify strikes to dismantle Iran's nuclear and missile programs. And Trump warns that any attack on the US will trigger an unprecedented military response. And Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has reaffirmed the need to halt Israeli military operations. That came during his call with the Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulidis, where their discussion focused on regional issues. President el-Sisi emphasized Egypt's complete rejection of escalating conflicts. He urged the international community to play a more active role in promoting responsibility among regional parties, advocating for peaceful solutions. The Egyptian president also called for a return to the US-Iran negotiations, while stressing the importance of a comprehensive resolution to the Palestinian cause. The Egyptian Parliament Speaker, Dr. Hanafi El-Gebaili, has condemned Israel's military aggression against Iranian territories, labeling it a blatant violation of international law. He emphasized the need for political solutions to regional crises and reaffirmed Egypt's unwavering support for the Palestinian rights. Gebaili also warned against unauthorized protests near the Egyptian border, stressing the importance of respecting Egypt's sovereignty and laws. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared that Israel's recent military strikes have dealt significant setbacks to Iran's nuclear program, potentially delaying it by years. He warned that more intense attacks were forthcoming. Netanyahu said Israel will target every site linked to Iran's regime, emphasizing that the damage inflicted so far is just the beginning. He highlighted efforts to dismantle Iran's ballistic missile production, warning of the threat posed by tens of thousands of missiles planned by Tehran. Netanyahu framed the campaign as a critical battle for Israel's survival, promising to fight until victory is achieved. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that Iran does not seek to expand its conflict with Israel, but will defend itself against aggression. Araghchi stated that Tehran does not intend to escalate the conflict with Israel unless compelled to do so. He emphasized that Iran's actions were in self-defense and would cease if hostilities against the country were halted. He cautioned that any attempt to extend the conflict into the Persian Gulf would be a serious strategic error with the potential to destabilize the broader region. Araghchi also accused Israel of attempting to derail diplomatic efforts, particularly the ongoing nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States. He noted that Iran had been preparing to present a proposal during the sixth round of talks, which was ultimately cancelled due to the recent escalation. And Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke with the U.S. President Donald Trump, condemning Israel's military strikes against Iran and warning of the risks of a wider regional conflict. According to the Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov, Putin voiced serious concern over the potential for escalation, calling the consequences unpredictable for the broader Middle East. Trump, in turn, described the situation as very alarming. Despite rising tensions, both leaders expressed openness to reviving negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. And the U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that any attack by Iran on the United States would trigger a military response at levels never seen before. In a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump denied any U.S. involvement in the overnight attack on Iran, but said Washington could help broker a peace deal between Iran and Israel to end the ongoing conflict. The warning comes as Israel intensified its military campaign. including a strike on the world's largest gas field, prompting Iran to halt nuclear negotiations. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed even stronger actions against Tehran in the coming days. U.S. Secretary of State Pete Hegseth has emphasized that the United States remains in a strong defensive posture while continuing to offer Iran a path towards peace. Hegseth said the U.S. is not alarmed by the recent escalation with Iran, but is maintaining high readiness to protect the American personnel and interests in the region. "We're vigilant, we're prepared," he said, adding that Iran still has the option to return to negotiations. Hegseth noted that while recent developments were not unexpected, the U.S. is closely monitoring the situation and adjusting its capabilities as needed to ensure national security.
And the canal areas cannot and will not be controlled by China.
And residents in the central Israeli city of Rehovot woke to scenes of devastation after an Iranian missile struck commercial and residential areas overnight, killing at least 10 people. Israeli rescue teams searched through the rubble for survivors, while firefighters and police cordoned off dangerous zones to keep residents safe. The strike was part of a wider missile barrage launched from Iran, targeting northern and central Israel, following Israel's major military campaign on Friday against Iranian nuclear and military sites. Tensions between the two nations have sharply escalated, with ongoing retaliatory attacks. Yemen's Houthis movement announced that it had launched hypersonic ballistic missiles targeting central Israel's Jaffa in coordination with the Iranian military. In a televised statement, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Sarria said the strike successfully hit sensitive Israeli targets over the past 24 hours as part of what he called a unified response to Israeli aggression. He praised Iran's role in the assault, calling it a bold and faithful stand against the Zionist forces, and reaffirmed the Houthis' commitment to supporting Palestinians in Gaza until Israel ends its military operations and lifts the blockade. And for more analysis, we now move to Salma Marwan in our newsroom. Hello, Salma.
Thank you, Salma. And for more on this, we're joined by Ashraf Al-Ashri, Al-Ahram newspaper managing editor, speaking to us from Cairo. Mr. Ashraf, welcome to Qnews. And first off, let's start with addressing the rising death toll on both sides. How will this influence the domestic and international support for the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran?
Good afternoon to you. Of course, the war today is an open war. Each team is using all the resources possible. It turned into now a war, not just a battle targeting military facilities. It's now targeting all infrastructure facilities and strategic interests and ports and airports. And now they're heading to explode all buildings, including military personnel and leaders and scientists, and now even civilians. Now Iran is trying to make up for the casualties dealt to them since the dawn of Friday so far by sending a number of high-tech missiles that can actually create new reality in Israel with a state of outrage as the people are falling killed and injured now inside Israel, creating a state of outrage. And in exchange, Israel is now targeting all strategic facilities, including the weapon manufacturing plants, and
yes,
and consequently, with the continuing war with the same base of escalation will require the international community to call on both parties to stop and cease the fire.
Allow me to cut in here, please, because let's address the United States position. What's your take on Trump's statement when he said that his country had nothing to do with the Israeli strikes on Iran? And also, he warned that Tehran will face an unprecedented attack from the U.S. if it decided to strike the United States. What do you make of this statement?
Of course, there is complete certainty for everyone in Tehran. Even the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi stated this morning to the press that the United States gave the green light to Israel to actually strike Iran, and the US was well aware of all the details of the attack, and they have a lot of objectives and goals from the targets in Iran, and that Iran wanted to exonerate the United States. Trump wanted to exonerate the United States from this military operation. It's true that Iran was not engaged logistically, but they are providing weapons and intelligence and information to Israel. They are providing everything, all the resources that are being periodically sent to Israel for days to practice pressure on Tehran, because there is a US-Israeli plan to destroy Iran and the Iranian regime, and this might actually change the shape of the current regime. All the details stress that the US and Israel have a plan to change the political reality and the military and economic realities in the region.
Sir, you've mentioned earlier the targeted strikes on strategic sites in Tehran, such as the Ministry of Defense headquarters. How will this targeted strikes alter the military and political dynamics between the two countries?
Definitely, Israel changed the tactics of targeting inside Tehran. They started with targeting the senior military leaders and Revolutionary Guard commanders, and they also targeted the ballistic missile bases as well as the infrastructure of the drones. Now we're witnessing changes in the course of goals. They're now targeting the oil facilities, as they are the backbone of the Iranian economy. Now they are also targeting police headquarters in the capital Tehran and everything related to the houses of the air forces leaders and the military leaders, such as the Wali al-Asr Street. This will be met with a violent and aggressive reaction from the Iranian side, who are now directing ballistic missiles towards Israel, and at night they will intensify the operations to launch the ballistic missiles, as we have witnessed during the course of the past 2 days.
Yes, sir. Now, tackling the latest development, which is the cancellation of the U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations officially, what does this reveal about the challenges of diplomacy amid the escalating military conflict, and how might this affect future peace prospects?
Cancelling the negotiations was expected. There is no way that Tehran would actually sit on the negotiation tables today in Muscat, and the United States was the one that gave the green light to Israel to carry on with the operation. There is no confidence now between Iran and the United States, and this requires some efforts, intense efforts, to get the two parties to sit on the table and to achieve a ceasefire, and then maybe the way will be paved for the resumption of negotiations. In my opinion, Israel will not stop the war except after accomplishing the goals, especially related to the nuclear program and destabilizing Iran.
That was Ashraf Al-Ashri, Al-Ahram newspaper managing editor from Cairo. Thank you so much for your insights. And now we go back to Salma Al-Fiqi in our studio.
Thank you, Salma. And the Israeli occupation army has issued a rare video warning in Farsi, urging the Iranian civilians to evacuate areas near military equipment and weapons production facilities. Delivered by Master Sergeant Kamal Pinhasi, spokesperson for the Israeli army targeting Iranian media, the message warned that remaining near such sites poses a serious risk to life. The announcement follows Israel's largest military strike on Iran last Friday, aimed at curbing Tehran's nuclear ambitions and neutralizing its ballistic missile capabilities. The Israeli rescue teams are searching for at least 35 people reported missing after an overnight Iranian missile strike struck residential buildings in the coastal city of Bat Yam. The attack killed at least 4 people in the city and injured more than 100, according to local officials. Nationwide, 7 people were killed and over 140 wounded in multiple strikes as emergency crews continue efforts to locate survivors trapped under debris. And Iranians in Tehran have voiced strong support for their country on Sunday, following a night of missile exchanges between Iran and Israel, as Israeli rescue teams searched through the rubble of homes destroyed in Rehavot, where at least 10 people were killed. Iranian citizens stood defiant, backing their government's response. Israel has warned Iranians to evacuate areas near weapons facilities, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed even harsher strikes ahead, saying recent attacks were just the beginning. And Israel's military leadership has declared that strikes on Tehran marked a pivotal moment in a long-planned campaign, with the army chief saying forces were now paving the way to Tehran. In a video released by the Israeli military, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir was shown visiting an Air Force base in central Israel, underscoring the military's heightened readiness. Military spokesperson Brigadier General Efi Defren told reporters that Israel had targeted 150 sites across Iran, 40 of them in Tehran alone, highlighting what he called the strategic and operational importance of reaching the Iranian capital. He added that these strikes were part of plans that had been in preparation for years. And French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has stated that Iran's nuclear program poses a threat to the security of both Israel and Europe. Barrot emphasized that diplomacy is the only way to prevent escalation of the conflict between Israel and Iran. And Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov have discussed the recent military escalation between Iran and Israel over the phone. And Fidan expressed concern about the conflict, asserting that diplomacy is the only viable solution to resolve it. And the Non-proliferation Treaty is a landmark global pact aimed at preventing the spread of nuclear weapons and promoting peaceful use of nuclear energy. And now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. And 6 Palestinians were killed and several others were injured when an Israeli military drone struck a civilian gathering in Deir al-Balah, the central Gaza Strip, raising the total number of Palestinians killed in the Strip since early Saturday to 42. And earlier on Saturday, Israeli artillery shelled a civilian gathering in El Tufah neighborhood east of Gaza City, killing 4 people and injuring others. The wounded were taken to Al Ahli Arab Hospital for treatment. In the early morning, Israeli forces carried out a deadly attack on civilians waiting for food aid west of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. And medical sources confirmed that 12 Palestinians were killed and more than 50 injured in the assault. And UNICEF spokesperson James Elder has described the situation in Gaza as dire, with families struggling to secure even one meal a day amid intense bombings and a severe blockade. Speaking from Qnews, Elder said hopes for a ceasefire have faded and aid deliveries cover only about 10% of what's needed. He highlighted that children are dying from treatable illnesses worsened by malnutrition and lack of medical supplies, with only 19 hospitals partially functioning. Many families live in tents under constant attack, forced to relocate repeatedly. Elder criticized a new militarized aid system in southern Gaza, saying it limits access and endangers children collecting food. He warned the system aims to push people south, dismantling more effective networks established during a ceasefire. And the Gaza municipality reported that the ongoing Israeli war of annihilation has led to the destruction of 134 service vehicles, amounting to 85% of its total operational equipment. In a statement, the municipality explained that this systematic destruction has targeted the core infrastructure essential for municipal services, namely water and sewage systems, waste collection, road clearing, and the operation of vital facilities such as water wells and treatment plants. And the Australian government has announced an additional allocation of $10 million to support the delivery of urgent medical and food supplies in the Gaza Strip. The statement emphasized that Gaza's health infrastructure has been destroyed due to military operations and that essential supplies of food and medicine in the region have been depleted. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, and here's what we have been covering. The Egyptian president calls for the resumption of the U.S.-Iran negotiations. Netanyahu says Israel will intensify strikes to dismantle Iran's nuclear and missile programs. And Trump warns that any attack on the U.S. will trigger an unprecedented military response. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. And don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.